Hi everyone, before we start the lesson today, let's go through the course syllabus. And this course is Logistics, Engineering and Supply Chain Design. Before taking this course, you have to complete the course Principles to Logistics and Supply Chain Management and Operations Research 1. After this course, you are required to know how to distinguish different concepts and problems in logistics and supply chain management. And also you have to know how to formulate and solve different logistic and supply chain problems by using mathematical techniques. You also need to solve a model using computer-based software such as Cplex or Lingo or Python and MATLAB. You will show this one via a project. Here is the textbooks and references that you can use for this course. First one is the Simchi Levi, Designing and Managing the Supply Chain Concepts, Strategies, and Case Study. And another textbook is Supply Chain Management, Strategy, Planning, and Operation of Suning. And other reference you can see in the syllabus here. Okay, now let's go through the course outline. In the week 1, we will learn about Introduction to Supply Chain Management. And in the next 3 weeks, we will learn about inventory and risk pooling. In the 5th week, we will learn about network planning. In the next week, we will learn distribution strategies. And after that, we will review for the midterm. And after midterm, we will study about supply contracts. And in the 9th week, we will learn about the value of information. We will learn how to play the beer game. And in the next 2 weeks, we will learn aggregate production planning. And in week 12, we will learn about coordinated product and supply chain design. And in the next 2 weeks, we will learn about smart pricing and revenue management. Then after that is the time for presentation. The time for presentation will be informed later, maybe in the next lessons, after I tell you what you have to do for your project. And finally is review for final exam. And here is the course assessment. We will have the quiz and activities in the class, and group assignment will take 30%. And there the group presentation will be 15%, and the quiz and performance in the class is 15%. We have one midterm exam that takes 30% and one final exam that takes 40%. Okay, so if you have any question, you can email me. I will give you, okay, maybe here, this is my email. Okay, and for missing class, you can email your lecturer via this email. Okay, here. Today we will study the chapter 1, Introduction to Supply Chain Management. So in this lesson, we will go through 3 main parts. The first one is introduction. I will give you an overview definition of supply chain and supply chain management. And then in the next part, we will learn how many decision phases that we have to make when we manage supply chain. And the next one is a process view of our supply chain. So what are components of a supply chain and what is supply chain management? So look at this figure. This one represents for a supply chain, and you can see how many components we have here. The first one we have suppliers, then operations or manufacturers, then distribution center and customer. So what is supply chain? A supply chain consists of the series of activity or the activity and organization that materials move through on their journeys from initial suppliers here to their final customer. So we have three flow. The first one is material flow, will from the suppliers to the end user or the customer, and the information and cash flow will be from the customer to the supplier. It's reverse way. Okay. And what is supply chain management? Supply chain management include planning, organizing, directing, and controlling flows of material, information, and cash, money. And the goal of the supply chain management is we try to produce and distribute the products at the right quantities to the right place at the right time. This one I'm sure that you already learned in the course principle of logistics and supply chain management. I will give you an example like Grab. When you order Grab food, you expect that the Grab driver have to buy the right quantity of the food that you already ordered and have to deliver the food to your house, not other house. So it's to the right place and at the right time, that maybe within 15 or 20 minutes, but not longer than that, because no customer want to wait for a long time. Okay. And when we manage the supply chain, we want to satisfy the service level requirement and also minimize the total cost. That is about supply chain. How about logistics? Let me remind you again, logistics is just an element of supply chain. And logistics is the process of planning, implementing, and controlling the efficient and effective flow and storage of raw material, or in process inventory, finished good, and related information from point of origin to point of consumption for the purpose of conforming to customer requirements. So what is efficient and what is effective? Efficient is do things right, and effective is do right thing. The main purpose of logistics is try to help the flow of goods smoothly. Okay. And in logistics we have those activities like procurement, purchasing, inward transport or traffic management. Inward transport is the transport when we deliver the material from supplier to the organization. So from supplier to the organization, we call it inward transport. And from the organization to the end user customer. So from here, from supplier to the organization, this one is inward transport. And from the organization to the end user, this one is outward transport. Okay. Okay. And also we have other activities like receive. Okay, let me go back this again. So when the material from the supplier to the organization, we will receive the material. Then after we receive the material, we will organize, stock the material here. And when we receive the orders from the customer, orders, we will do order picking, pack, then pack the order, pick the orders, then deliver it to the customer. So those activity we call it logistics activities. Okay. Okay, here is an example about Coca-Cola company. So Coca-Cola is a manufacturer, and here they do manufacturing and stock product in the warehouse, and they have distribution channels. So they receive the material from the first tier supplier. What is first tier supplier? It is the supplier directly deliver the material to the manufacturer. So the supplier that deliver the material directly to manufacturer, we call it the first tier supplier. And the supplier that deliver the product to first tier supplier, we call it second tier supplier. So for example, we have the first tier supplier of Coca-Cola is TCC, also another Coca-Cola company or bottler. And the first tier supplier is like vanilla cherry flavoring, that is the Stephen company. And after they finish their Coke bottle, they will deliver it to the first tier customer. So first tier customer are the people who receive directly product from the manufacturer. For example, like wholesaler, retailer like Walmart, Shopee, Big C, or vending machine. And then the first tier customer will deliver their product, sell the product to the second tier customer. And here is the final customer, the end user. Here is some case study like Nike Logistics Center or how UPS cargo containers work. You can take it as, or you can watch it at home as a reference. Okay, so what is the objective of supply chain? Earlier we say the objective of supply chain management is try to minimize the total cost while we try to satisfy the customer service, right? So the objective of supply chain is we try to maximize the overall value created. So what is overall value created? That is equal to the customer value minus the supply chain cost. So what is customer value? For example, a customer buy a wireless router from Best Buy for $60, and the supply chain incurs costs like information cost, storage cost, transportation cost, so on and so forth. So we will have the customer value here is $60, and the supply chain cost, for example, is $40. So we will have the supply chain surplus, or the overall value created is $20. Okay. So the supply, we try to maximize this value. And the supply chain profitability is the total profit to be shared across all the stages of the supply chain. Okay. So the supply chain profitability is the total profit from supplier, warehouse, manufacturer, and here, like the whole, all the stage in this supply chain, not only one stage. If we say we want to maximize the profit of this supply chain, we have to calculate the sum of profit of supplier, of warehouse, factory, manufacturer, distribution center, store, retail, and to end user, not only one stage. Okay. And where is the revenue come from? That is from the customer, right? The customer are the only people pay for the products. And the cost, the source of cost is the flow of information, products, or funds between the stage of supply chain. Okay. We go back to the first one again. So for example, we have to pay information flow. To know what the customer wants, we have to do market research. We have to get information from the customer. So we have to pay for those costs. And we also have to pay for the cost of producing products. Okay. So an effective supply chain management is the management of the flows between and among supply chain stage to maximize the total supply chain surplus. I will give you some examples so that you will know how important it is to make the supply chain decision. Walmart has been a leader at using supply chain design, planning, and operation to achieve success. From its beginning, the company invested heavily in transportation and information infrastructure to facilitate the effective flow of goods and information. And Walmart also designed its supply chain with a lot of stores around the distribution centers so that they can reduce the cost. That's why in 1980, the sales of Walmart is $1 billion, jumped to $408 billion in 2010. Another example of another example about the success when they use supply chain design and planning and operation to grow and earn profit is 7-Eleven in Japan. In Japan, that's why they also from 1 billion yen sales in 1974 jumped to 3 trillion yen in 2009. It's a huge jump. However, we also have some example that they didn't use effective the supply chain decision. That's why uh, they got hurt. For example, Webvan. Webvan is an online business, and they design the supply chain with large warehouse in several major cities in the US. However, Webvan cannot compete with the traditional market, the traditional supermarket in terms of cost, because this is an online business, so they have to pay higher transportation cost. That's why in 2001 the sale of Webvan just folded in just in 2 years, but the sale is folded. It means reduced half. Another example is Borders. Border didn't adapt the supply chains to a changing environment. So that's why their sale reduced from $4 billion in 2004 to $2.8 billion in 2009. Okay. Another example is Dell company. So they also an example for using the supply chain successfully, and they achieved $56 billion in 2006, and luckily they were able to adopt the new supply chain strategies. That's why they become a strong company like today. So via those examples, the lesson we learn is supply chain design, planning, and operation decision play a significant role in the success or failure of a firm. So to stay competitive, supply chains must adapt to changing technology and customer expectations. Okay, so next part we will see how many decision phases of a supply chain. We have three main decision phases. The first one is supply chain strategy or design. The second one is supply chain planning, and the third one is supply chain operation. So in supply chain strategy or design, let me change another colors. So in the first decision phase, we make this decision, we structure the supply chain over the next several years. So this one is long term, in several years. And the second phase is supply chain planning, and here we make the decision in shorter time, that is over next quarter or next year. And the third level is supply chain operation, that we make decision daily or weekly operational decision. Okay, so in supply chain strategy or the design, the first phase decision, we make decision like where we should locate our facility and the capacity of production. Also, we make decision if we should outsource things our products or we should produce in-house, and we also decide what kind of transportation we should use to deliver the products and how to design the information system. Okay, supply chain design decision is a long term and it's expensive to reserve, so we must take into account market uncertainty. The second decision phase is supply chain planning. So here we make the decision for short-term operation, that is in 1 year or in a quarter. We start with a forecast of demand in the coming year. Okay, so in this phase we will determine which market will be supplied from which location and how to build up their inventory plan. Or we also determine their inventory policy and when we should uh, have the promotion and the size, determine the size of market promotion. We must consider in planning decision the demand uncertainty, the exchange rate, and competition over the time horizon. The third decision phase is the supply chain operation. This one is weekly or daily. It's in short term, weekly or daily. And this decision is regarding to individual customer orders. The goal of this phase is to implement the operating policies as effectively as possible. And here we allocate the orders to inventory or production. We set the order due date or generate the pick list at the warehouse, which we determine the order picking, which order we should take first and which one we should take later, and we make the order routing for the order. And here is less uncertainty because it's in short time horizon. Okay, so that is about the overview about supply chain management, and the decision phases in supply chain. And in the next part, we will learn about the process view of a supply chain. So we have two main ways to view the activities in a supply chain. The first one is cycle view and the second one is push and pull view. Cycle view and push and pull view. So in cycle view we have four big cycles. The first one is procurement cycle. Second one is manufacturing cycle, replenishment cycle, and customer order cycle. And in one cycle we separate it in 6 small stages. The first one is supplier stage. Supplier will market their products. They will launch the new product to the market. And the second stage is the buyer place orders. Then the next one, the first one, second one, and the third one, the supplier receive the orders from the buyers. Then after that, the supplier will supply provide the orders to the customer. And the fifth one is the buyer receive the products, receive the supply from the supplier. And the final stage is the buyer returns reverse flow to the supplier or third party. So I will give you an example. For example, Apple will launch the iPhone 11 to the market. Then the buyer will make the order to the suppliers, will buy how many iPhone they want to buy. Then after that, the supplier will receive the order, like the total demand, how many iPhone the customer want to buy. And then Apple will provide iPhone to the customer. And the next stage, the customer will receive the product iPhone. And when after the buyer receives the iPhone, they will give some feedback to the supplier, or after they finish using, then they can return the used product back to the supplier so that the supplier can remanufacture the products. So that is the cycle view of the supply chain process. We have 4 cycles, and each cycle we have 6 more stages. One way to view the supply chain is push-pull view. So we can see here all the activity that happened before the customer order arrives. They are push process, and after those activity happen after the customer arrives are pull process. So push process is the flow from the supplier to the customer, and the pull process is the flow from customer back to the supplier. This one from supplier to customer. So what are difference between push and pull order? The objective of push system is to minimize the cost. So the company will produce first before the customer order arrive, so that they can take advantage of the long production run or the large batch. So for example, they just produce many products so that they can reduce their overhead cost, and also they can reduce the production cost because they produce mass production. It means when we start manufacturing, the company will just start a large quantity of the product A before they produce the product B. However, for the pull system, they focus on the service level. They want to maximize their customer service level. So they only produce after they receive the customer requirement. So in this case, if the company has enough the capacity to produce, enough capacity for production, they will satisfy their customer service in the highest level. And also that's why if we use the push system, we will have the longer lead time, because for example, the customer order the product product B, but we have to finish producing product A before we produce product B, so that the customer have to wait. And conversely, if we use the pull system, the customer will don't need to wait for a long time, so the lead time is shorter. And for the push system, they focus on the resource allocation. Because of the limited resource, the company has to organize, has to plan and produce the product in advance, and then they will store the products in the warehouse. Then when the customer need it, they will just deliver it to the customer, so they can guarantee that they achieve the customer service level. However, for the pull system, they focus more about the responsiveness. They want to respond to the customer as fast as possible. And based on the characteristic of different strategy, the push system have the higher complexity, and the pull system have lower complexity, because the push system we have to like forecast the demand of uh, the product, so that they can have a production plan better. Okay, and here is an example of the strategy of Dell company. So if we view this process as a cycle view, we will see this process have two cycles. The first one is procurement cycle, and the second one is customer order and manufacturing cycle. But if we see this one as a push and pull view, we will see the procurement cycle are push process, because they buy their material before the customer order arrive, and they stock them. But the customer order and manufacturing cycle are pull process, because they only manufacture the products after they receive their customer order. Okay. Okay. And how if we view the supply chain in a macro process? So we have the supply chain process we just discussed in two views earlier, can be classified into three main parts. That is the relationship between the business with the supplier or provider, between business and customer, and internal business. So we have three parts. The first one is customer relationship management. The second one is internal supply chain management. And the third one is supplier relationship management. And the integration among these macro process is critical for effective and successful supply chain management. So if you want to manage a supply chain successfully, you have to maximize, optimize these relationship management. Okay, so what they do for the supplier relationship management. So here they manage the activities between their business, the firm with the supplier. They manage the material that we buy from the supplier. They negotiate and sign contract with their suppliers. And also they evaluate and select and choose the suppliers, and also design the collaboration between the business, the firm, and the supplier. So the second one is the internal supply chain management. So here they manage the activities inside their organization. They will make their strategic plan, demand planning, supply planning, and fulfillment. They will have their plan for location or capacity of warehouse, decide the inventory level or inventory policy. And in the third one, for customer relationship management, they will manage the activities happen between the firm, the business, and the customer. So here they try to fulfill the requirement of the customer and manage the order, and also control the orders. And also they do promotion, advertisement to attract more customers. And here I also give you some examples of supply chains. For example, Gateway, Apple, Jara. You can read it as your reference. Okay, so through today's lessons, you should know what is supply chain, what is supply chain management, the brief definition and characteristics, and also remember how many decision phases of a supply chain, and what we do in each decision phases, and how many way we view the process of a supply chain, and what are difference between them, and what we have in supply chain macro process. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you.